This is Scott. He's a triathlete averaging 135 per 100 in a 1500 meter swim. And he's wondering what can he do to get faster. Now, off the bat, one thing we can look at is his stroke rate and stroke count. This is a 25-yard pool, I believe, and he's going 20 strokes on the way down, 21 strokes on the way back, with a stroke rate of 66 strokes per minute, or 0.9 of a second for each stroke that he's taking. Now, if we keep things really simple, one thing that we can do there is either look to increase the stroke rate, so the cadence of his strokes, or we can look to increase the distance that he gets with each stroke. And we'd probably want to look to do both. But the first thing that I normally look at with people is what can we do to get more distance from each stroke that you're taking? That comes down to reducing drag, so keeping a more streamlined profile in the water, good body line, good body position, and then making sure that we are getting the most out of our catch and pull, and we're coordinating that with our rotation and our kick. So to begin with, let's have a look at what could he do to get his stroke count down. So how can he lengthen his strokes here? Because if we just look at that calculation of, say, 21 strokes on that second lap times 0.9 of a second there, if he was to be able to hold the same stroke rate but do 2 less strokes on that second lap, then he'd be swimming about 1.8 seconds quicker for that one lap. And if you were to do that for 4 laps, well, that would be about 7 seconds quicker per 100 yards there. So you can kind of see how those calculations work out. So let's have a look at what he could do here. The main thing that I noticed is, like, he's got good rhythm, good tempo, all right, and looks like he's got a pretty good feel for the water. And if you're averaging a 135 per 100 for a 1500 meter swim, you're doing some good things in the stroke, which is great here. Number one that stands out to me here is that on his breathing strokes is where he's missing out on that hold of the water. So if you look at this stroke here where he's not breathing, all right, enters, reaches forwards, it looks like the catch is setting up reasonably well. You can see he's got a pretty good angle with the arm here, where he's got the elbow bent, the fingers pointing down, and he's holding the water pretty well, has a nice in sweep and finishes fairly close to the hip. So that right arm is where he's getting most of his propulsion, most of his hold of the water. But on the strokes where he breathes, which is this one here, you'll see that this arm comes fair way under the body. He's not really timing it with his rotation. So that's where the biggest opportunity is at the moment. So if we dig a little bit deeper into this, the first thing that I would look to do is when he takes a breath, don't rotate so far through the shoulders. Because if you go too far on your side, where here he's going to almost 90 degrees through his shoulders there, so 76 degrees, very hard to have a good catch because that puts too much strain on your rotator cuff. So if he could reduce his rotation through his shoulders at this point and be 30 to 40 degrees through his shoulders instead, that would allow him to then be able to get a better catch. But that's the first thing. That's the bottleneck right now for him to getting a good catch on that left-hand side, is he's just over-rotating as he gets the breath there. So first of all, he's going to have to feel a bit flatter through the shoulders, and also probably just keep this left arm reaching forwards at shoulder depth a little bit longer. Now, it doesn't mean he needs to stop and pause and glide, but he can slow it down through that reach at shoulder height up here for just a little bit longer. And that's going to help him have some balance and stability when he gets his breath. Because if the arm's all the way down here when he's trying to get his breath, you don't have much support, much balance there, because that oncoming water is going to be hitting the top of his arm here, sort of pushing him down, dragging him down, and he might feel like, oh, it's kind of hard to get my breath at that point. So he just needs to rotate less, keep this arm reaching forwards at about this depth for a little bit longer before he then moves the arm down after that. So that's where I would start. Because you can see another consequence of that is with that over rotation, that's where the legs tend to kick quite wide. So that's increasing the drag, which is slowing him down, which is causing him to lose distance per stroke. So that's why I'm focused on the breathing strokes here, which is every second stroke as well. So that's a large portion of your strokes where there's opportunity to get a lot more from it. Now, the other thing that he may need to sort of allow himself to do there is just allow the head to be a fraction higher as he breathes. So sometimes, we find that when people are trying to get the breath really low, it can cause them to over rotate. So you'll see here, he's getting that breath very low. It'd be okay for him to actually have his head up a little bit higher in the water. Not where the whole head's out of the water, but we'd probably want to try and just keep maybe a third, up to a half of the face in the water. That's fine. But here he's actually really low with his head. So sometimes I find people are trying to be too low because they think that, all right, that reduces the drag. However, if your breathing's impacting your ability to get a good catch and causing you to over rotate, well, you can actually keep the head just a fraction higher. So you might be just trying to be too low with that breathing, which I'd be thinking there. Now, once he's comfortable with not rotating so far on the side, then we can really start to work on the catch on that side. So the catch is from here down to here. And you'll see at the moment that the hand goes in towards the center through that movement of the catch. The downside to doing that in the first movement, so actually coming inwards there, is that you don't really use your lats very well, or your back and shoulders as well, as you would if you were out a bit wider. So with a good catch and good pull, the first movement will usually be a bit of an out sweep, coming slightly away from the center here, which then allows you to use your lats. But here he's come in to the center. So he's not going to be as strong through that movement. But with less rotation, then it's going to be much easier to be out in this sort of position. And then we'd probably find that the hand would follow a better path all the way through, because currently you can see, all right, that hand's crossing the center line there, which we usually want to avoid. We don't want the hand to come under. We want it to just stay outside of that. So if you look at the last movement of the hand through here, it looks as though the palm's kind of facing off to the side a lot, and then it even maybe faces up towards the body. So he's missing out on a big part of that propulsion at the back end of the stroke there, but it's all set because of the breathing and the over rotation. Now, the only other thing that I'd be sort of considering here is he might be able to just enter a little bit wider. It does look like there's a bit of crossover happening with the entry here. So he is probably just coming a bit too close to center and crossing it slightly on his left arm and his right arm. So he may need to feel a little bit wider out there when he goes to enter and reach forwards, because you want to enter in line with the ears and go forwards there. However, if he does rotate a little bit less through the shoulders on his breathing stroke and maybe through this stroke as well, that might just correct it, because usually some over rotation will cause the timing to be off a bit and the arms to cross over. So it might be a matter of just fixing that rotation, and that might correct it as it is. So that's where I would look to focus. And a way that he could judge whether or not those changes are actually, whether he's making those changes, is his stroke count in the water should inch its way down if he's making those changes, because that should reduce the drag, that should increase the propulsion, which would make each stroke a little bit further, a little bit longer. So that's the way to look at it. And again, don't think about reducing stroke count as do the minimum strokes that you can do where you're stopping and gliding and having to kick really hard or anything. We just want to increase the distance per stroke by having better technique, not by having these big, long, ridiculous strokes where your stroke count goes down to 40 strokes a minute instead of 66. So that's where we've got to look at it. One of the things that we cover in the 8-week Faster Freestyle course in the last week is stroke rate. Week 8 is stroke rate. But before that, it's all those things that help reduce drag, increase propulsion, all those different parts of the stroke. So it is an important factor, but we've got to make sure that we look at those things that help you get further with each stroke. So if you're looking for something simple to follow, check out the 8-week Faster Freestyle course in the link below.